You're now watching the Good, Bad, and Ugly podcast, featuring Kevin Bunk, John Downs, and Reese Jantz.
All right, GBU Pod, first off-season preview. We're going to be doing these in draft order. As always, I'm Kevin Bunk. Unfortunately, last few weeks have been a bit of a roller coaster for the pod. I'd like to give you some insight into that now. The first week of no content came the week of Christmas. We decided it was best for the families to spend time with each other. Don't be here doing this because we do work very hard throughout the week on planning and, everything. So we decided let's just take a week off, regroup, and we came up with some new ideas too. So some of those new ideas and new paths we'll be taking are, we'll still have the Good, Bad, Ugly on Tuesdays. We'll still have After Hours on Saturdays. But we've come up with a lot of different content that we want to be putting out. And this is going to be one of those new things. It's going to be my off-season previews where I go through all 32 teams in the league in draft order. So we start today with, of course, the team that has the first pick for the last two seasons, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are the most abysmal franchise in the NFL. They have a terrible market, but they have their franchise quarterback. So they might be a step ahead of a couple other teams, or he's going to be the biggest bust in NFL history. We're kind of on the verge of seeing both of those, but it's not Trevor Lawrence's fault due to the fact that he had the worst situation I've ever seen in his rookie season. So we're going to change that today, and these are my steps to how to change it, and we're going to start by reviewing what went wrong in Jacksonville. It starts with the hire of Urban Meyer. We all know the story. He's already a few weeks removed. I also want to make the disclaimer that there's still 1 week left of the NFL season, and the Jaguars play the Colts. There's playoff implications for the Colts. I expect the Colts to massacre them on Sunday, and that's why I feel pretty safe with the draft position of the first pick for the Jaguars, and that will not change. If it does, it doesn't change much of what I'm going to say here, except for the players that I'll mention through the draft. But let's go back to last year. Urban Meyer's hired. We all know the story. I don't have to go that deep into it. But he's hired. They hired Trent Baalke. We're going to get to him. And they actually have a pretty decent, on paper, 2021 NFL draft. They had a terrible free agency year. Meyer was quoted saying that the NFL does bad business, probably because he just couldn't get the players he could get at Ohio State on the NFL level. And it's not for everyone. It really isn't. And they did a pretty good job in the draft last year. It's promising. I like what I see when I look at these draft picks. So we're going to start with their 2021 draft. Trevor Lawrence, first overall pick. He was the prize of the draft last year. Multiple teams tanked. The Jaguars were the only team that could successfully win one game and secure the first pick. So they get Trevor Lawrence. He had an absolutely awful rookie year. Not a lot of supporting cast around him, especially with the guys on the sideline. Urban Meyer and his coaching staff were terrible from the start. He picked guys that were not even regarded highly in the NFL. I know that was one of the first things I noticed. And I hope that these rookies, former rookies by the end of next week, can be saved by whoever comes in next. Trevor Lawrence is their first pick. Then they go to the 25th pick and take Travis Etienne. It wasn't a good pick based on position need, but I like Etienne, and I'm excited to watch him play in a actual real system. And he's going to help Lawrence out the same way he helped him in college. He's going to be a safety blanket in the receiving game. He's going to be the check down guy, and him and James Robinson should mesh well together if used properly. One should not get everything, but that's for the coach to decide, and they need to pick a good one, and as I've said, we will talk about that. Tyson Campbell, 33rd pick of the draft, first day 2 pick. He's a corner from Georgia. Very good pick at the time. Passed on a couple guys that I had preferred, but they liked him. That's their guy. They took him, and he was actually pretty decent this year. He had a 60.8 PFF grade. Good for a rookie, especially at corner when you're on the field all game, every game, and you have no help from your pass rushers, except for sometimes when Josh Allen decided to take over. He had 2 interceptions on the year, 56 solo tackles, and 11 assists. So, really pretty good rookie year when you compare him to other rookies. He was one of the better rookie corners in a good rookie corner class with guys like J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Eric Stokes. He's right in that mix of guys that are good, but they have to improve that pass rush to see him thrive. And perhaps their most important pick, aside from Trevor Lawrence, comes again in the second round with Walker Little. Was the 45th pick. He had a 65.6 PFF grade. Only played 158 snaps this season, though, and he looked good when he was out there. He gave up 2 sacks, but for a rookie year and a small sample size, I'm excited for what Walker Little can bring with the proper coaching. So now we can move on after that brief, summary of their offseason last year. I want to move on to this one. That's what this is all about. I'll be doing that every time, though, reviewing the past year, seeing how teams are trending in the offseasons. Jaguars, pretty average offseason last year. I expect them to do the same thing this year, but they got to get the head coach hire right. And I'm going to read a couple names now. Jim Caldwell, Doug Peterson, Byron Leftwich, Kellen Moore, all guys being considered, Nathaniel Hackett, Todd Bowles, all guys that are good candidates, too good for Jacksonville, most of them. The Jaguars made a terrible decision along with firing Urban Meyer. They decided to keep Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke's their general manager, and for those of you who don't know about Trent Baalke, he is one of the notorious bad general managers in the league. Should have left with Urban Meyer. Or the only reason he's the GM is because Urban Meyer had control in that relationship. Trent Baalke's not a real NFL GM. He tried to be one with San Francisco and ran them into the ground before John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan got there. It was one of the worst drafting general managers and front offices ever. They drafted guys that were injury prone, thinking here's a guy that, I'm just trying to think of examples. Like Bryce Hall for the Jets was at Virginia. He was a late first, second round projection prior to the season. Tore his ACL at Virginia. This is a guy that Trent Baalke will take in the second or third round again because he thinks before the season that's the player you're getting, not the after injury player, which was a very, very big disaster as the 49ers were hurt and still are every single week. So Trent Baalke is going to make it very hard to bring in a head coach. He had to go with Urban Meyer. They're probably going to be retaining him for the next season and for this crucial offseason, which is very, very discouraging for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'll read those names of coaches that are reported as the Jaguars coaching candidates. We start with Jim Caldwell, Doug Peterson, Nate Hackett, Byron Leftwich, Kellen Moore, Matt Eberflus, and Todd Bowles. Dan Quinn already turned down his interview. Of course, former Falcons head coach. He already turned down his interview, and it's for smart reasons. You only get 2 chances in the NFL. You don't get a third as a head coach. So your first one is not a success, so you don't go to a team like Jacksonville for your second one. So guys like that, Doug Peterson, who might have a pass at a third chance because he has a Super Bowl ring, but Doug Peterson, Jim Caldwell, and Todd Bowles are guys I also want to cross off that list. Matt Eberflus has been very highly touted for the last few years, so get rid of him as well. I don't know why Matt Eberflus would come to the Colts, would go from the Colts to the Jaguars. I don't know why the Jaguars totally want Matt Eberflus. I think they need to go offensive with this hire. Not that Eberflus isn't going to bring in a good coordinator on offense. I'm always a believer in that. Offense or defense, you can get a good offensive coach out of it. But let's look at my 2 candidates for this job, Byron Leftwich and Nate Hackett. Nate Hackett's the Green Bay offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator. Both have prior ties to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Leftwich is a former quarterback there. He was drafted by the Jaguars. He played on some bad Jaguars teams and some average Jaguars teams, and he wasn't a great quarterback himself, but now, of course, he's Tom Brady's offensive coordinator for the last 2 years, and he's been there for the last 3 with Bruce Arians, and he's coming off a Super Bowl win. He's very highly regarded in the league. He's got a lot of respect. I think this is not the job for him because of that. If I'm Jacksonville, he's the guy I want. I really like Byron Leftwich. I like what he can bring to a young quarterback because he's coaching the greatest of all time right now. Byron Leftwich is without a doubt learning from Tom Brady. He's younger than him. He played against him. He's coaching him now. He's without a doubt learning from him. And Bruce Arians is also a great teacher of the game too. His assistants have had success always. He doesn't have many of them because he hasn't been coaching for a really long time, but his assistants always have success. If I'm Byron Leftwich, my experience with Jacksonville is enough to steer me away from the job. Nate Hackett, my experience at Jacksonville is enough to get me the job because he was the offensive coordinator for their 2016-2017 seasons. He had the reins for that AFC Championship run where they almost beat Tom Brady and went to the Super Bowl. And I think he's just a realistic hire. I don't think this is an attractive job at all. And for a guy like Nate Hackett, who may never get another head coaching job if Aaron Rodgers is gone this offseason, and that could cause so many problems for a young offensive coordinator who's looking to become a head coach. It could cause so many problems for him having no Aaron Rodgers. I'm taking this job if I'm Nate Hackett. And if I'm Jacksonville, I'm not upset with it. He got everything he could out of Blake Bortles and their offense during that AFC Championship run, making guys like Allen Robinson stars and guys like Allen Hurns really good, really respected, and highly coveted wide receiver twos. Guys like Leonard Fournette had huge years under him. His run offense is fantastic, and he's done it in Green Bay. He's reinvented their run game. Remember C.J. Spiller in Buffalo in 2012? Really good that year. That's because Nate Hackett was his offense coordinator. He's good at scheming up the run. He's good at making the quarterback's life easier. And we've seen Aaron Rodgers thrive with him this year. And it's Aaron Rodgers, I know, but I love what I've seen from the Packers offense that has changed over the last few years with Matt LaFleur, and Nate Hackett's a big part of that. So Nate Hackett's my head coaching hire. Now, when you move past Hackett, you get into this terrible look at free agency and the draft for Jacksonville. It just seems kind of hopeless, aside from, having the first pick. It just seems like you're just not getting better, because who's going to come play for this team? I'll tell you right now, nobody is. But I'm making sure that I'm retaining a couple guys. Cam Robinson's one of them, 26-year-old left tackle. He's coming off of the franchise tag. He's really, really good. But he's looking at $16 to $18 million a year this offseason. Are you willing to put your eggs into that basket? I would be, because you have to keep the offensive line as good as you can to try and keep Lawrence protected. You have Walker Little to play the right tackle position. Keep these two together for a little while. Andrew Norwell, another offensive lineman on his way out, and so is A.J. Cann. Two guys that, especially Norwell. Norwell was, at a time, the highest paid offensive lineman in football. A.J. Cann, pretty good veteran. I let Cann walk. Norwell stays. I'm trying to keep Norwell back. I don't think he will. But other than that, there's a lot of really expendable guys. Trey Herndon's a guy that I'd probably try to bring back. 25-year-old corner. Him and Tyson Campbell can make a really nice duo for the next few years. But other than that, DJ Chark, not a guy that I'm bringing back. Taven Bryan maybe at D-tackle just because of his age, 25 years old. He'll be 26 by the time free agency starts, and he's pretty solid. So those are the guys that I'd bring back. I don't know how you look for free agency. Guys like Will Fuller are names that I like. Try to get Trevor Lawrence some help, but only on one-year deals. Follow the model that the Houston Texans used last season. Sign one-year deals. Guys like Phillip Lindsay in Houston, Mark Ingram, who got multiple years, David Johnson. Just try to get these guys, but don't trade DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. Try to get these guys that need to prove their worth for another contract. That's one way to make a team pretty respectable and competitive with the other bad teams in the league in a year. I don't think there's much more that Jacksonville can do, though. Just try to get guys that you believe Trevor Lawrence will get assisted by. So a lot of, veteran guys that have come off their rookie contracts and are looking for a year or two. Maybe Michael Gallup's one of those guys who just tore his ACL, did not have the year he wanted going into a contract, and he wants to go somewhere for just a year for decent money to get himself to where he can get that 4 or 5 years at 12, 13, 14 million a year. Get guys like that want to prove to themselves that they can play and prove to everyone else that they could play. It'll help Trevor Lawrence out a lot if they could do that. I'd look to see them make a ton of transactions with the money that they have and just try to supplement a competitive roster. It's not going to be easy, but that's the only way that I see them doing it, because it's not an attractive place to go play. Now you move on to the draft. Jaguars have the first pick of every round because they got the first pick of the draft. That's how it works. Draft, you got to get 4 or 5 starters out of this easily, because you start Kayvon Thibodeau, no-brainer for me. Aiden Hutchinson, if you love him that much, I don't know what combine season's going to have in store for us, but Aiden Hutchinson, if you love him that much, that's a good choice too. Now, the best pick of the draft, in my opinion, outside of obviously the best first-round picks, best pick of the draft is the first pick of every other round. You have an entire day to sit on your second-round pick, your fourth-round pick, You have to hit those picks along with your third-round pick. You got to nail these picks. Maybe trade up in this draft if you have to. They don't have an excess of draft picks, but they definitely don't have a shortage, and they have the premium pick of every round. I'm looking to get guys like John Mechie from Alabama with my day 2 pick. A couple examples of that working out really well is 2 years ago drafting Joe Burrow with the first pick, drafting T. Higgins with the 33rd pick. So I forgot to do 32 plus 1 for a second. And then last year, the Jaguars had the first pick too, and they went with Tyson Campbell in the second round, which I did not like for them. I like the player. He looks good, but I really like taking the skill guy, especially after the quarterback. And what did the Jets do with the 34th pick? Elijah Moore, Zach Wilson had a safety blanket with a really great rookie receiver, and I'm excited to see what they do for the rest of their careers. So those are the steps for Jacksonville to try to just get to some sort of, don't pick in the top 5 next year, or at least pick second. I mean, this is getting to be a really big problem for the Jaguars. Back-to-back years with the first pick, but you're getting your quarterback that you loved, that everyone loved, and he looked terrible his rookie year, but he certainly is not a bust. And you're getting a defensive end, regardless of who you take. You're getting a star defensive end. So with the proper coaching, a guy like Byron Leftwich, a guy like Nate Hackett have the connections. They've been to the places that they can get you good assistants. Don't screw this up and hire Kellen Moore or hire a guy like Jim Caldwell, who I really like Jim Caldwell in Detroit. He should have never gotten fired. But just don't settle for the average head coach that's going to bring you back to respectability. Let a head coach like Nate Hackett come in and grow with Trevor Lawrence and become respectable with Trevor Lawrence, and the young head coach is going to get guys to come play for him. Make sure that he's a guy that totally steals the room when he is in front of it. Make sure that he's the guy that Trevor Lawrence wants to be with. Make sure that the chemistry is good, and try to keep him on the offensive side of the ball. I don't blame you for a Matt Eberflus on the defensive side of the ball. I really think he's a great defensive coordinator, and it'll help you get to respectability again. But a lot of good head coaches out there, good crop of guys, and I think that it's time for Shah Khan to make a good move, because he's made every wrong move since he bought the team and since this franchise has been started. He's got to make a right one this time, you'd think, but it's not that easy. Trent Baalke hurts this team, and they got to hit on the draft, and he's the one that calls those shots, and that's a problem for me. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Jaguars offseason. I don't have a lot of confidence in this team to build around Trevor Lawrence because they haven't shown it. But if they could pull a free agent or two out of nowhere, like a Chris Godwin-level signing or Devontae Adams-level signing, which I do not think is going to happen. I've said that. That's why I didn't even go through names. I think more guys like David Njoku are more appropriate for this team in a free agency. They can do it. They can get to a point where they win 6 or 7 games next year and Trevor Lawrence grows. But you have to hire the right guy in the next few weeks. Look at Nick Sirianni. They got totally dogged for that signing, that hire. That Sirianni's opening press conference was a disaster. Eagles are going to go 10-7 and make the playoffs. Hire the guy that you guys want. Don't hire the guy that's the hot topic. Don't hire Urban Meyer again. Don't hire Doug Peterson because he's been to the Super Bowl. I actually like Doug Peterson. I don't even think he'd take your job. But make sure you hire the guy that you're comfortable with. And don't bring in this team of experts. Don't pay $800,000 for some consulting firm to come in and hire your guy. Go hire your guy. Don't get told who to hire, and don't let the media tell you who to hire. Coming next, we're going to have the Detroit Lions, and then we're going to follow it up with just the draft order. This video ran a little bit longer than I had hoped. I'm hoping to keep these from 8 to 15 minutes. But for Detroit, I'll try to do a little bit better. I think it's more appealing and much easier to watch at that time frame of 8 to 10 minutes. So next video, we'll come to Detroit, the second overall pick in Motor City, Dan Campbell. A much different story there as we are moving into our second year with a good head coach. Thanks for watching, guys, and make sure to stay tuned for the rest.